Is Steven coming or is he traveling today? Does anyone know?
He is away. He's been sending messages around, but he didn't say anything about these. Maybe I'll try pinging him.
Okay, yeah, I saw some comments this morning, but yeah, didn't know if he
Well,
was.
he's offline, so it looks like he's not going to join.
Okay.
I don't know if somebody else wants to take over, or we just skip it this week and move to the next one.
I mean, we can always ask if somebody have any pull requests that, or like specifically that they are either working on or no needs review. I've gotten some substantial progress on the Gear 3 stuff, but it's not quite ready for formal review. But there's components that are going to need some observation, some changes I've made that may or may not catch somebody's attention. That's 2353 is the pull request number. And I can share those specifically, or just wait until it's formally ready for review and then put that out.
Have you had a chance to look at merging in changes from main with 2409 going in?
I have got the merge conflicts resolved. I am now running through a couple tests yesterday to make sure that I've merged it properly. And then I'll probably end up doing a compare, or I'll re-review my pull request, see if I've merged it reasonably based on what the diff looks like. But the code has gone in fine. We'll see about if there is any functionality that hasn't worked. I guess maybe I'll have to reach out to you on what were the changes that you did and how to test those to make sure that both your changes and my changes in existing behavior are all there together.
Sure. Yeah.
So
yeah, happy to answer questions whenever.
Here's the man.
He has joined.
You muted. Did you get your audio?
There we go. Does that work?
Yeah, we got.
How's things going? Sorry about that. Sorry for being late.
No worries. We just weren't sure. I knew you were traveling this week if you were actually going to be around or not. So
yeah, I hope to, but then I got waylaid. Okay, so I guess Cyro, you just gave your update and where you are. Mute. You're on mute.
Yes, it's not ready for review, but I've just merged in Daniel's stuff. It's still local, so you're not going to see that in pull request yet. I'm going to run through testing locally before I push that merge, which is quite substantial, but the actual file conflicts were relatively minimal. I'm more worried about the logic and things like that.
Awesome. That's good. Sounds happier than what Jason Sherman went through or is going through.
Yeah, so I appreciate those comments this morning. It made me feel a lot less. There's a lot going on that I have no idea what is, so it makes it okay. Easier. So I guess from that comment, then instead of me trying to figure out how to implement it, I can just document all my sticking points and then let people with more knowledge determine what the mapping should be. Like I can do the best that I can.
Yeah.
And then I'm assuming, that now that there are some things that just aren't going to be available. So, I mean, the other approach to that would be to not even bother, right? I know a lot of this is so that we've got a period of time where people can transition out without knowingly calling the non-creds endpoints that they're transitioning out of stuff.
A few of them are needed though, like publish.
Yeah, so on the non-cred side, there are still a few revocation endpoints.
Yeah,
but not nearly the same number. So
yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it just makes it tricky for me to try and map out. We had more documented that we want to keep on the, I guess I'll just say the
Okay, so
current
there's,
way. So it's trying to get those and trying to figure out like, oh, okay, if I wanted to have those in place, and have people not really know that they're using a non-creds, I'm missing a lot of stuff that I just can't find. So I was trying to figure it all out, but maybe I should just document what I think it is. And here's a gap, here's gap, here's gap, and then have other people fill it in or say, don't worry about it. That's just something that we have to explain. So yeah, I'll stop. Yeah,
I mean, you did see the list that we said these are not going to be recreated. There was only 3 or 4 though on that list.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of ones left to stay. Like, let's keep these ones or discuss them.
Okay.
Some of the ones that are keeping, I'm just like, I can't really find the matching data.
Interesting. Okay, that's interesting.
There's things persisted in the current world that just aren't persisted anymore. So a lot of the things like, great, I'm just going to grab this record for you. That's a whole bunch of context stored in the wallet that maybe we don't want to in the future anyway, but it makes it kind of hard to figure out. So the example that I had there was which is the rev reg entry that I'm supposed to return with this call, because that is not stored directly anymore. So anyway, I think after your comment there, if that's all right, I'll start documenting.
Please.
This is the endpoint. This is what I've found, and these are things that are missing, and then we can do them. We can make progress that way. Yeah. Okay. So I feel better about not only do I not know one way of doing it, I don't know 2 ways of doing it. So
excellent.
So I'll take that approach and start doing it endpoint by endpoint and saying, this is what I found, this is what I think works, this is what I think is missing, and we can discuss after that. So I'll move on from that. I'm just currently doing the poetry pull request of Gavin's. So I'm just going to add a couple of files in there just so the dev container works. But I think everything works. I'm going to do a couple more tests this morning, but I think we can move along. I know Daniel's made a lot of comments and stuff in there as well. So, so I think we can get that done this morning.
I was going to share screen. Hang on. You can see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. One thing I noticed was these are getting run twice for some reason. Oh, I see. One of them is because they're run on main. One of them is because they're run on 0.10.1 on the other tag. That's why they're run twice. I guess that's appropriate. Okay. But I was more wanting to go to the pull requests. First of all, Daniel, do you have any other comments on what Jason Sherman is working on the revocation, and agree that's the right way to go?
I am feeling a little out of the loop. I'm not sure which comments you're referring to. So I there must be an issue that I've not been keeping on top of.
I'll paste in the link. It's not a PR yet because I didn't didn't think I had enough stuff, but I just putting it in the issue, so I'll just paste it in here.
Yeah, I think it's this right here. I've got it. Yeah. It's 2432, but basically difficult time mapping the tasks. And so I gave the update about the full state of the registry versus the deltas, the timestamps, what they are. And then the tails file no longer being needed for issuing and revoking, and that may be changing some of the I don't know if that's changing any of the endpoints on revocation. Probably not, now that I think about it. Those wouldn't affect revocation. So anyway, yeah, that's probably an irrelevant comment right there, but these two are, I think, what he's running into. And so the idea there, you heard the idea that he's just going to document the challenges on an endpoint by endpoint basis.
Sure. Yeah, I'll read through the comments so far here and see if I have anything to add as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, as far as the other pull requests go, now that we've got 0.10.1 out, for those who missed the drama this morning, 0.10.0 somehow had a file that already existed in PiPi, and so it refused to publish the source code. PiPi refused to accept the source code. Whoops. For 0. Oh, sorry about that. For 0.10.0. So we had to publish 0.10.1 immediately. So
do we know when 0.10.0 was pushed to PiPi? Like what caused that?
I can't find anything in there about why it refused. So it accepted one of the files, but refused the source tar gzip file. And gave an error on that. When we moved to when we redid it for 0, so this upload package Python failed down here. And it failed because as I say, the tar zip file, it said already existed, but I can't find any possible reference of where that would have occurred. So basically what we did after a while, what PiPi says is no matter what happens, no matter what you do, even if you delete the release, it's still not going to create another file that it's already published.
Right.
So the only real answer was to go to 0.10.1. And so that's what we've done. So 0.10.1 is now the interesting one for us to go forward with. So now that we have that release, where are we on the state of which ones to merge in? I don't think any are ready to merge at this point.
I think the migrate to poetry is pretty close to being ready to merge, if not already there. The swapping out Flake 8 one, I just kind of put on hold so we could focus on getting the 0.10 release out. I could also just go and pull in changes and rerun things and get that one ready to go as well without too much effort.
Okay. I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to merge these two relatively quickly so that we've got the full life cycle, if you will, or the full cycle of the next release to play with them.
Right.
Make sure all is well. So I agree with that. Your comments, Daniel, triggered changes to this. Wade is still questioning what Shanjot is doing in this one.
I had a meeting with Shanjot this morning. Well, Wade and I had a meeting. I think we're steering him into the right direction.
Okay.
For the handler, he might. New changes need to go in. It might turn into a simpler implementation. I think he might have overcomplicated things to begin with.
Yep.
Hopefully something that he can fix fairly quickly, and then that would be probably ready to merge, but it's not that urgent either, I guess.
Okay. This, just so you know, on this security policy thing, this was done. I'm a member of the TOC at Hyperledger, and they are coming up with a new policy and how to express the policy on a per repository basis or per project basis. And so I use PiPi as an example for that. So that's where that's coming from. We'll leave it in draft for a bit. It doesn't radically change things other than to say we're using GitHub for any security vulnerability reports. Okay. Anything else to go through?
I had a quick follow-up question on the 2420, the invalid client TAA acceptance. So you'd mentioned that Andrew had there'd been some back and forth between
Yes.
the author and Andrew. I was trying to find that just to make sure that I wasn't to make sure I hadn't misunderstood what the outcome of that conversation was, and I was having a hard time locating where it actually took place.
Yeah. Just one moment. Let me. I gotta move this. Hang on. Okay, it'll be in, I'm pretty sure it's in IndieVDR. And I think it got merged today, the issue, the pull request in IndieVDR, so I'm just checking that. Yeah, here it is. So yeah, here's the bit of back and forth on it. And the merge.
Okay, interesting. So I see there's a number of commits by Andrew directly on this. Those look like just workflow things. So, okay, I'll
Okay.
take a closer look at these changes and make sure that what's happening in ACPI is in line with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as I say, this did get merged a few days ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 days ago. Yeah. Okay. That is that one. And then this one's over to you when you get a chance, Daniel.
Yeah.
And then we've got Cyros here, so that's where we are. All right. Is there any more to cover this morning?
I have a kind of like a more general question.
Yep.
If I can. More around kind of like almost like a postmortem type of thing, based on the last few releases that we made, always having some type of like unexpected issue, and it's more of like an open question. It's like, is there anything we can do better or we should be focusing on to catch these type of problems earlier? It might be that it's really something that we couldn't catch until we got into a very specific production-y scenario. So I'm aware of that. I'm just wondering if anybody thought about it and has any ideas. There's a lot of stuff changing and a lot of moving parts, so it's very complicated to keep track of all of them. I just wanted to throw it out there as a, have we thought about it? Should we think about it? Do we have ideas?
I'm just trying to write down what the issues were, and then so there was the 3 that started with the Kim's improvement to the speed up of the multi. So that was the first. That triggered what turned out to be 2 more issues out of that. You fixed one, then another one appeared and you fixed that. And then basically there was what Daniel did, which was a pretty radical change in a different area, but a pretty radical change that triggered basically backwards compatibility issues for non-ACPI. And so those would have been caught with AATH.
And the last one I think was like the symlink fix that I published, which is kind of like a very edge case kind of thing. I feel like that was kind of probably hard to catch beforehand.
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, the one with AATH was just we tried to go fast and get a release out. So it was tougher.
Is ATH running on Nightlist now?
It runs every second night. It was just using it, it was running too often with nothing new in it. And so perhaps that's not the best trigger. So if we could come up with a better way to trigger what to run, it might be better. But yeah, that's where we are right now of
because I guess if assuming we can figure out a way to run it only if there have been changes, so to speak, and that we run it constantly, then maybe the only thing we need to do is like change. And I guess this is mostly for our team, Stephen, as far as I understand and know, but like change our pattern a tiny bit, where even if we do, like before we do a release, we make sure that the AATH tests have passed and we don't upgrade any of our agents beforehand. It's going to delay by potentially a day any action, but might cut down on further problems, I guess. Just thinking out loud here.
This test runner.yaml, it runs on 1, 3, and 6, interestingly. So it skips 2 days and then runs. So it runs 3 days a week.
Maybe I can chat with Sheldon. I might have somebody that can look into maybe changing these. I'm not sure. I need to talk to them and see if they're available or capable. But if that's something we want to look into, maybe we can start the conversation.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky because what it'd have to do is look at 2 different agents, the 2 different agents that are involved, and see if either of them changed. Which is a little bit painful. So it actually would have to go into the down into these things and figure out, oh, well, this one changed or this one did. So basically the way it works is that high level one runs and then it runs all of these lower level ones, and the lower level runs actually run the tests for a combination of agents. And there's even one that runs for 3 agents in one test. So it definitely gets interesting.
Out of curiosity, we don't do any like running ACPI against the previous version of ACPI in the Aries agent test harness, do we?
No.
Okay.
And that's a good idea too.
Yeah, I think so. Some of the issues that we saw with the 2409, at least one of them only would have been visible in the scenario where we were running against an agent that had previous mediated connections. And so it's like it's such a narrow like condition. So it's difficult to know where to try to recreate those scenarios, like, or even if we should try to recreate some of those scenarios. I'm certainly like, so what I did with the 2409 changes and the issues that arose from that was I did what I could to reproduce at least a subset of the conditions within the unit tests as a regression test for the future. But like, in terms of like being able to catch those sooner, like that was still kind of a reactive thing, I guess. Something that we've started doing on our team, and we've talked a little bit about this as well, as we've got a number of plugins that we've written integration tests for, and so with each new release we try to go through and at least trigger the integration tests on each of those plugins. It'd be nice if we had an automated system for that, but we're at least in a better state where now, just by going and changing the version of ACPI that gets pulled into the plugin, there's some automation to the process, I guess. So I think that's one area that we've discussed and we could probably try to push for again, is to have like a plugin repo where we have some workflows that are triggered by ACPI releases that run through integration tests associated with those plugins. I think that'll help catch some things. And then another thing that we've started doing somewhat recently, I think I've shared this repo before, but in the Indicio org, we've got an ACPI minimal example project where the intent of the project is to just help us quickly recreate issues and demonstrate features and stuff. And I'll often use them like just internally. I'll take an example and send it off to another team so they can, you know, build whatever they need to with that feature and just have a quick reference for, you know, what the expected sequence of admin API calls and stuff are. But something we've done in this project as well is I've started to create, like, I used to just like branch and then do stuff on the branch, but I've started to merge the demos and tests back into the examples directory.
Yep.
And each of those examples has a Docker Compose file and a script that runs through the scenario. And I've set it up so that that can be run through a GitHub action as well. And I'm a little conflicted about how I feel about it, because what I'm essentially doing is writing integration tests to some extent that are outside of ACPI. Yeah. But I've also got a little bit greater flexibility in writing them here because I can pick different versions of ACPI. I do have the ability to set up a scenario with different versions a little bit more easily. And then I can also introduce like other stuff that's perhaps not even related to ACPI at all.
Right.
And, you know, just try to plug them together and see what happens. So yeah, this has been helpful for us.
Yeah, we use demos a lot. Demo folder a lot for that. That's what Andrew or Ian used to do a lot, was he would, you know, whenever he'd add a feature, he'd add it into the demo, which does add it to integration. But man, we're getting into some, you know, when you start saying, oh, let's cross over and run, you know, previous versions against it and things like that. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
We do have a meeting. I think Sam and I right now are scheduled to meet with Hitachi next week, who wants to do long-term releases. And that presumably would lead to this type of thing where an LTS version of ACPI would stick around for a long time and continue to be tested against and so on. So that may be the answer. And they would do the work to do that.
Interesting.
So
yeah, I think that kind of strategy would be could see some value for sure.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of cases where it's like I have all the features I need, right? Like we've got this use case down, we don't need these cutting edge stuff. And then yeah, that becomes a bit of a platform to test against, compare against.
Yeah.
The LTS strategy, though, the thing that we're gonna have to think well about is gonna, in my opinion, I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm just saying technically it's gonna add a bunch of overhead in our maintainer duties and things, because it means like if a bug is found, you need to have feature branches to backport the bug fixes, which is totally fine. It's just gonna make the processes we have less lean than they are now, maybe for the better, but we need to consider that as well.
As I say, the suggestion is that Hitachi would fund that and do that work.
Right. So if that's the case, I mean,
yeah,
their problem, but
so we would definitely support if they're willing to do that.
Yeah.
I don't even know the context. The actual thing they presented to me is Aries. So I don't even know what they mean by Aries in this case. So
this has been a little bit of a peeve of mine lately, but and I've it's broken me to the point where I've like just crying out in frustration that interop is an illusion. But like things like the issues that we discovered with the 2409 changes. So that was us touching like the connections code and changing it in a significant way for the first time in a long time, right? And it kind of, it brings to my awareness, at least, the fact that like we might have, check marks in the interop matrix between these different implementations, but like the did documents that were being sent and the did documents that we were sending as ACPI, like have some stuff that's just by modern spec state is just like complete nonsense to some extent, you know what I mean? So
and it's getting changed again.
Yeah, so it's frustrating how long it's taken for us to move those things closer in line with the specification. And like the interop testing is really valuable because it helps us to discover these issues and help keep things working against each other and stuff. But it also has like it exerts a different kind of pressure to like keep things the same, even though it needs to change. So I'm not sure what the balance is. Doing a long-term service release seems like that could exacerbate that. And I would certainly hope that those sorts of long-term service stuff can take place after some of these big changes that we're in the middle of making are completed.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking the same thing, which is one of the other things John wants to see is a 1.0.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something we talk about next week.
Yeah.
Is a 1.0 and what that would mean. It keeps sort of the goalpost keeps shifting on that one.
Yeah, with the specifications always changing. Yeah, I could see with back to your comment around like how do we implement the new stuff? Like if there is a specification and the community agrees that we should be adopting it, maybe we should write the interop test first. I don't know if that makes sense. And then it sits there as a big red X. Until somebody implements it, because what we do is the reverse, right? Well, it's working. We get a big green check mark. Why would we go change it? As opposed to being like, well, this is what the spec wants, and it also forces you to implement at least a portion of the specification, right? If I send you this is the response I get. Oh, it's changed from this old version to this new version, and you can see that it's still the 1.1 test passes, but the 1.2 test fails. Oh, ACPI hasn't gotten around to changing it. Oh, Aries Framework Go hasn't gotten around to changing it, right? Because then that becomes a goal, is to make that check mark, to make that actually check mark instead. It also shows you with people, again, if certain agents have implemented the newer stuff, or which of the newer stuff they have. Or if they've done the old stuff, because then you can see, they're still doing 1.1, because that's the test that's passing. Like you could even go that far.
I think the challenge with our approach in the Aries agent test harness on that front, though, is that because we're testing implementations against each other, like one of the implementations needs to move first. And because otherwise, there's no implementation to test against that is implementing the new stuff. So
I'm wondering if there are small subsets of things like specifications that we can test without having to build a full-fledged implementation. But you're right, that's probably not worth.
It's funny you say that, because back in the day,
has to go first.
Back in the day, I worked on a thing that was kind of almost that, and that was the Aries protocol test suite. And I don't have bad feelings about how that ended up, but like I don't know that it was ultimately viable to maintain like a reference protocol implementation. I don't know, maybe in like more ad hoc senses it could be beneficial for us to say, like, here's the minimum viable thing to run this protocol, and then just run everything else against that and see how it does. But
but I mean, it also comes a little bit back to Steven's point of like, oh, look, this is what happens when we might write a specification and nobody like implements it, and then all of a sudden, the moment we implement it, we find a bunch of issues. Not a bunch of issues, but things that might be missing, right?
Indeed.
Food for thought. I think it's a good comment all the way around. All the way stemming back from Emiliano's point of, can we predict any of these or find any of these issues before we resolve it? And I think there's probably too many variables to catch them all, but there are probably strategies to at least give some confidence when it comes to backwards compatibility or forwards promotion of old objects.
Well, this has been depressing.
We always got lots of problems. That's never been the issue. always lots of things to do and lots of things to change.
Yep.
I will tell a joke
Yeah,
next
if
time
somebody
that I
else
bring
wants to,
something
if
like
somebody
this
else
up.
wants to do an LTS version, I think it's great.
Yeah, I don't know. At the same time, like I didn't mind breaking stuff too much with 2409 because it's nice to have progress in the right direction, at least,
Exactly.
you know. So it's
Yep.
like even though there were a bunch of issues that popped up after the fact, I don't feel bad about it, and I'm glad that our processes worked and we were able to catch some of these things.
Yep.
But like I think breaking stuff is a good indicator of moving in the right direction, because we don't want things to stay exactly the way as they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. My comment was not targeted to kind of like any around that. Like, I agree with you. It was more about like, is there anything that we can reasonably do or reasonably change, even in our processes, right? Like talking about our team to limit the impact. But yeah, I agree with your comment.
The other thing that we've got to do, and it's the same on our, you know, our legendary spreadsheet, is to bump up, and so we're not having old things around. That would help us, I think. Making it easier to, you know, deploy earlier before releases.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a mix, right? Because like, we wouldn't have incurred in these issues if we waited for a test, but the tests don't run every day. Where do you draw the line between like acting super fast and acting super reliably?
Yeah.
And that goes also back to my comment about the LTS, which my feeling is, I mean, I'm curious, but my feeling is I don't think we are yet at a point where an LTS is really feasible. Things are changing way too fast for an LTS to keep up. It's just gonna, I'm afraid it would just cause to whoever is maintaining it a lot of headaches with overhead maintaining stuff.
Yeah.
I think you'd have to start with like once AIP2 is done, that's the anchor point.
1.0.
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
1.0 is AIP2, and that becomes the LTS version. Like, I think you have to anchor it against some other complete suite. If you arbitrarily picked it, then yeah, absolutely, I agree that I don't think it would make sense.
But kind of not like the comment I did initially, and to clarify, similar to what I said about breaking things. Like, I'm not trying to bash it. I'm just trying to be mindful about the whole process. Anyway.
Cool.
Is there any roadmap or anything for, I would guess probably more after it hits 1.0. Like, this code's been around for quite a long time, and it's getting, you know, I haven't been doing it very long, but it's hard to slide in new things without breaking things. So when I was getting into the plugin architecture, that became very noticeable that plugins weren't, some of the code that was supposed to be quote unquote plugin was not independent. So that, to me, there's a bunch of, for growth and adding more capabilities, there's a lot of issues that need to be sorted out at a fundamental level, which might be quicker to just sort of start from scratch than to kind of remove and rebuild around. So is there ever going to be kind of a like a parallel? So once you hit kind of, this is a stable thing, people can use it, but before we start adding in new major chunks of functionality, that we kind of readdress the architecture?
I mean, it's definitely possible. We've done it once already. That's how we got to. Yeah, it's already been done once. So this was entirely new base at one point. So Yeah, it's just figure out where the effort is best spent.
Okay.
Yeah, I know there's absolutely tech debt. That's things that are integrated and make assumptions that we now need to generalize. No, I see it too, but yeah, I've got to pick our battle. But I agree. I think we need to break down some of these pillars that have existed for a long time, just because they've.
Yeah, I mean, I think this release has done an awful lot. What Daniel was doing, what Jason you're working on now is going to be a huge one for that. I think it's a pretty significant update we made this time. So it's picking these areas and deciding how many of the areas are there? How do we attack them? Do we attack them one at a time, or do we restart something fresh? It's a tough call. It would be good to know how many there are and what they are.
The part that Jason Sherman was mentioning about the plugins, I think the way I see it, I think it would be important to at least reassess and figure out whether we want to tackle that before we add more functionality for the reasons he said. If we need to refactor, we're going to have a lot more parts that we need to refactor into a plugin potentially, and they're not connected homogeneously, while doing the pluginification of some of the functionality might be a necessary, hard and annoying, but like necessary first step to speed up the rest of the development later on.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a battle because there's always going to be new specs, new things, right? So it's to go back and refactor and rewrite code at the base level is fairly significant, but doesn't really get new features, right? So it's I mean, this changes so rapidly, so it's tough. It's just I just noticed that there's like it's a little bit confusing, and there's things that are really tied to other chunks of code that probably shouldn't be. But it's all evolution, right?
That so we can make intelligent decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would probably be a reasonable exercise, right? Yeah, is to document. I think so. So things like the injection mechanism, the session mechanism, and then one thing that I'm also guilty of for time is there's a lot of logic in the roots. So I've already commented on that a long time ago. That was one of the first things I saw. I was like, yikes. So so we could enumerate that stuff and then we start picking off. So there's definitely things like, say, I mean, having logic in the roots, like business logic in the roots, I think is probably an easy thing to refactor out without impacting things. And then that could kind of start moving it into a kind of a more modular direction, right? So you start coming up with service layers or whatever that are appropriate and reusable and whatnot. So it might sound daunting, I guess, but if you break it down into chunks and attack it, it might not be so bad. But definitely it's not in my mind until after we get to like 1.0 or anything. It's just not worth it to stop the presses right now and and do that kind of stuff. So not to add more worry to your mind for today's meeting.
Perhaps on a slightly more optimistic note, I will say that I've been working with ACPI for a long time. We've been around for a while. I've been contributing to ACPI for quite some time now as well, and I'm actually feeling very optimistic about the project. I gotta say, especially with recently, I think we've done a really good job as maintainers on keeping on top of changes and keeping things moving through. And like, while previously when we didn't have quite this level of communication going on, like it was easy to feel pessimistic about like the opportunity for change within the code base. I think we've really turned things around, and I think we're really going in the right direction. So thank you, Stephen, for calling out that we need to increase communication across the maintainers to help get over some of these issues and stuff. And
Yeah.
I think we are moving in the right direction.
I do too. Like, I think this change, like 2409, is huge. It's the type of thing, and that's what I'm hoping, is that there's, you know, I hate we need to revamp everything without really understanding without me being able to understand what they are, which is where I come back to this enumerate. But I think, like, if we can make a couple more 2409 type revamps, we'd be a long way through it.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear it. Yeah, like I say, I mean, I haven't been into this for very long, so I don't know all the histories and all the stuff and the evolution of where things are going from. But yeah, I mean, yeah, just looking through piles of code, it makes you kind of like, oh, but I mean, I can look at code I did 6 months ago and say, oh man, I want to change that too. That what was I doing here, right? So.
Awesome. Well, should we call it?
Probably.
Yeah, I'll tag people when I start adding in those endpoint things, so we can get like kind of more eyes on things as it goes. So yeah, sorry, you might be feeling a little spam today as I go through things.
No problem. That's good. Keep the communication going.
Yeah.
Right on.
Take care, all. See ya.
Hey, bye.
Thanks.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, fucks.